Good afternoon and welcome to the second webinar of the 2023 IHF Beach Handball Education Week, where leading experts from the world of beach handball will share their knowledge and experience throughout the next 7 days. My name is Adrian Costello and I'm a member of the IHF media team, and I will be your host throughout this week in the trip around the world of beach handball. Together with our experts, we will touch interesting parts of the sport, from the last trends in attack and defense, special situation, from the coaches and referees and other specialists' perspective. To begin with, I would like to say welcome and let you know that these sessions will be in English, but outline that we also have translations available in French, Spanish, and Arabic. These are simply at one click away by clicking the globe icon in the Zoom session. Only the persons entering the Zoom call can access these translations. It's quite easy and intuitive. You can see it also now on your screen in this PowerPoint slide. The IHF Virtual Academy is a new and innovative element for the worldwide education of important multipliers, coaches, referees, delegates, and PE teachers. It will also serve as a platform to provide live seminars, e-learning seminars, and license courses for different target groups in the future. All these sessions fall under the umbrella of the IHF Education Center, available at ihfeducation.ihf.info. All these sessions are being recorded and will be available on this website for on-demand video. For today, in this webinar, this is the second presentation of the 2023 IHF Beach Handball Education Week. We have a special guest, Dr. Michael Hinson, the head coach of the US men's national team, who will underline how important is the preparation for a national team to compete in a high-level international tournament by focusing on the team, the opponent, creating the game plan, and executing the said game plan. Michael, the floor is yours now, and you can start your presentation.
All right, no, thank you, Adrian. Go ahead and share our presentation here for everybody. All right, first of all, I just wanted to thank everyone, obviously, for sharing your time with us today. Time is the most precious commodity in the world, and just sharing that time, I think, with us is a testament of your love for the greatest sport in the world of beach handball, and just your passion to be the best at what you're good at, your desire basically to be the best at what you're passionate at. So appreciate that, and thank you so much. Today, as Adrian said, my name is Michael Hinson. I'm the head coach for the USA men's national beach team. I've been the head coach since 2016. We've been very fortunate enough to have qualified for 6 world events over the past 7 years. So we have had multiple opportunities to prepare a team for large events, for world events as well. What we do now is a lot different than what we did a couple years ago. There's always a evolving process, always continual learning for this. And what we do may not always be what's best for you. So hopefully you can take out 1 or 2 things from this lecture that will help you as you move forward, preparing your team as well. So we'll go ahead and start. So what we're talking about today is preparing a national team for a world event, for a high-level tournament. We'll go ahead and get started here with our first slide. So this is the agenda for today. I think it's important to realize or to remember that what we're going to focus on today is more kind of the tactical approach, more what we do on the sand. But when preparing a national team for a world event, it's super important that there's a lot that goes on off the court, right? There's a lot of physical training. There's the programs that you have to create leading up to tournaments. You want to make sure your athletes are peaking at the right time. Nutrition is so important. Developing a nutritional program to make sure your team has energy when it matters the most. Team chemistry is so important. You got to create those opportunities for your team to bond and find ways for them just to play for each other and how to support each other. But for today, we're just going to focus more on the tactical approach, more of the beach handball approach. So we're going to start with the basic agenda. We're just going to first, talk about scouting your team. From there, we're going to talk about some methods to scout your opponent out. And then once you've kind of scouted your team, scouting your opponent, using those methods and strengths and weaknesses that you've discovered to help develop your game plan. And then once you have that game plan, how do you develop it in practice? And then most important, when you get to the game, have fun. So that'll be our agenda for today. And I believe at the end, we'll have a little time set aside for any questions. Scouting your team. Scouting your team is super important. You must know your strengths and weaknesses before you can prepare for any opponent. You must know what your team can do. I think the reality is that growth starts with self-awareness. What you do well is basically how you're going to win. That's your strength, right? A lot of times we kind of focus on what other teams don't do well instead of focusing on what we do well. So that's really the key. It's just kind of being self-aware, knowing what you're doing good, what allowed you to win in the past, and really maximizing that as you approach the tournaments coming up. In order to get better, though, you have to analyze your past performances. Past performance is often the best indicator for future performances. So you want to analyze your shooters. You want to see their shooting tendencies. You want to analyze how you did, how your team performed in each offensive formation. And the defense, you want to see how you were at executing a game plan and how that game plan worked against different opponents. It's always better to know your strengths, and then that way you can know where to improve. So we'll go ahead and start with shooting tendencies. I think it's important to realize that everyone has habits. Like your players have habits. We focus on a lot of opponents' habits, but your opponents are going to know your players, are going to know your team sometimes not better than you. If they do, then you're in trouble. But you don't want to make sure that they don't know them better than you, but they're going to know them really well, and sometimes they'll know them actually better than your own players. They'll know their tendencies. So you really need to go out and you really need to kind of scout your team as if your team is your own opponent. Scout your shooters, see where they're shooting, see how they're shooting in different locations, see how they shoot from in-flights, see how they shoot off of spin shots, see if you're developing any tendencies on shootouts, and just kind of be aware before you get into the game of what your tendencies are. So when you get into practice, you can work on those, work on improving those, and just kind of growing your game overall. So you have more skills, more tools in your bucket to pull from when you get into games and high leverage, high pressure situations. The way we do it is we use XPS here in the US. We like to tag our games when we play them so that we have a large database of shooters. We go through and we share these shooting videos with our players to make sure that we're not identifying any tendencies. And if so, when we get to practice, to work on them. Here would be a simple shooting video for one of our players here. Not to give out too much scouting information with a lot of tournaments coming up, but this would be one that we would run just to kind of work on identifying tendencies here. Here in this video, we're looking at one of our newer players in the left wing on offense, Matt Coman's shooting tendencies, as this was his first offensive game that we've used him before in the past on defense. We wanted to identify any tendencies earlier so that as we move into the summer and we prepare more for more events, that he has his opportunities to realize if he's going too much near post, if he's not hanging in the air enough, and really work on the next couple months on these tendencies here. So it's important that when you're doing this, that you're doing this for all your players. Like you want to make sure that everyone is able to kind of get their videos, that everyone has those tendencies and is reviewing them on their own, so that when you get into practice that you can work on that. We create these shooter videos for everyone, for all the tournaments, and the more games that you do, the more shots you're going to get. So when we pull up shots, we can see probably the last 30-40 shots that we need. And then going on, we like to map the shots as well. This is I think a pretty common grid for the indoor game. We have something similar for our beach game. You want to basically mark the location from where each shooter is shooting, whether it's an in-flight, whether it's a 360, and then the location of the goal, and whether it was saved or whether it was a successful shot. I think these are, everyone is different learning. Some people learn visually, some people learn by doing. So this is, I think, a great visual map just to kind of help out your athletes and to help yourself out. when you're designing a practice for them. So number one, start with your shooters, start looking for tendencies, and then develop your practices to kind of really work on that to get shots. And really the only way to get better is to practice. Like, you got to put the work in, you got to put the hours in on the sand to really get to it. There's a lot of different drills that we do for shooting, but the key, I think, is just to get out there and shoot and practice. But when you're practicing, make sure that it's a quality practice. When we're practicing, we like to try to simulate the game environment as much as we can. This is just a simple drill that we're going to look at here for where we run fast break shots. This is I think one of the highest percentage shots in the game. There's no block. It's mano a mano, shooter and goalie. The whole goal is there. So this is one great way just to kind of get some shots early on. And then usually as we're going into practices and everyone's kind of gotten their maps and is kind of seeing their shooting locations, this is their opportunity to make mistakes. Like, this is where you want to practice, shooting to new locations that you're not comfortable with, or looking for smaller windows on the goalie that maybe you haven't seen before. So we try to create a practice here where it's okay to miss, it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to grow. I think you learn more from mistakes than you do sometimes from success. So this is one way that we come in. We just get hundreds of shots over the next month for our players. This is one drill where we're having high percentage shots without blocks, but there's a lot of other drills that we use where we're adding in the defense, we're adding in the blocks to kind of simulate that game environment. Once you've analyzed your shooters and once you've kind of created a game plan for them, next you want to look at the team as a whole. How did you work in certain formations? Which players were more effective in certain formations? What worked well for you? What allowed you to win? What are some formations maybe that we can work on? When we analyze our past performances and our past games, we're not only looking whether the shot was successful. We're looking at the space, we're looking at the decision making, we're looking to make sure that we're creating high percentage shots, right? The overall goal is to create the high percentage shots and then to make them. Sometimes you can make the wrong decision and take a lower percentage shot but score the goal. So really for us, it's about ingraining in our players, let's work as a team to create the highest percentage shot. It's not always going to go in, but we have to give ourselves the best opportunities and the highest percentage chance to be successful. We start with that by looking at our different formations. So here we're going to look at playing a center back specialist and how we did with that. Center back specialist, can be a little bit different than having a sideline specialist or putting the specialist behind the pivot. When you have a center back specialist, the decision making has to happen a lot quicker. There's a lot of aggression. The defense is paying a lot more attention to you in the middle. So the time to make the decision is a lot shorter. So when we look at that, we look at, how did we use the team? How do we use everyone on the team to create the gaps? Are we starting from the far side wing to create some more space on the attack? How's the defense approaching? Where's the decision making coming? Right here. And then did we make a good decision that led to a high scoring opportunity? And then we'll map that out. If we had 16 possessions in this half, how many of those possessions did we have in this formation? And then at how many percentage of those were good attacks, high percentage attacks? Another formation that we use a lot would be putting our specialists on the sideline. Here you can see that we're running a specialist on the left wing side behind the pivot, looking to create that 2-on-1 with the specialist and the pivot. So this would be an example here of creating that space, but not having a successful outcome. Here, when you have the center back playing more off the specialist, not with a court jersey, they're going to have a little more space. They're going to have a little more time just because the defense doesn't have to pressure them as much or up as high. So it's a matter of using that time, using that space to create those shots. And once again, map them out, see how effective you were, see how effective each player was in those positions. And then the third formation that we like to run a lot would be specialist on the right wing. So in this formation, we have the specialist here on the right wing. He's playing away from the pivot, and we're using that specialist just to kind of create some space for the center back to attack and play some 3-on-2 on the left side. And then so map yourself out. Look what worked well. And some formations may work well against some teams that won't work well against other teams. Some formations may work well with some players in different spots. So really it's a matter of analyzing yourself to see what formations worked, which ones may have worked, but didn't work next time. And then how can we improve on these? How can we improve in this formation in the next practice, showing or just kind of working off what we saw from the defense? So know yourself, know what you do well. So then after you scout yourself, scout your opponent. I think most people like to spend a lot of time scouting their opponent. I think it's fun. I think it's a great opportunity to look for weaknesses, but like I mentioned earlier, really don't focus so much on your opponent's weaknesses as opposed to focusing on your own team's strengths and maximizing those strengths. So you want to find ways to maximize your strengths, but also taking advantage of some of the weaknesses.
Michael, I'm just going to jump in 1 second.
Yes.
To tell the attendees that they can ask questions if they want in the Q&A section, and then we'll try to answer them after your presentation. So I've seen one until now. So if others want to join asking questions, then they'll be answered at the end of Michael's presentation. Thank you, Michael. You can continue now.
Yep. No, thank you so much. So now we're scouting your opponent. Now you've seen your team. Let's see what the other team does good. Let's see what their strengths. Let's see what their weaknesses are. Same type of analysis. We're going to analyze their offensive formations, know what their preferences are, know what they like to come out. And depending on their substitution side, if it's a right wing substitution side, what is their preferred formation? If we're starting another half and it's the left wing substitution side, what is their preferred formation for that side? We want to analyze, what they do on defense. How aggressively are they playing? Are they coming up high? How are they guarding the specialists? If you put the specialists on the sideline, how are they guarding the specialists on the sideline? Where are they giving the 2-on-1? And then analyze the shootouts. How do they defend on shootouts? Are the goalies coming out? Are they staying in? Are they trying to push players to certain sides of the court? Do they like to shoot in certain locations? What is their comfort zone, and what have they been most successful for in the past? So here we're going to scout some offensive formations. We're going to look at different substitution sides. This game here was the European Championships between Denmark and Croatia. We were expecting to play both Denmark and Croatia, in the summer last year. So that was part of our scouting plan going into World Games for Alabama, as well as World Championships into Greece. Here, this one was more the Croatia scouting. I think Modric yesterday had a great presentation on their attack. Obviously, Croatia was dominant last summer and really showed some really high-level offensive performances. So this was part of scouting an opponent here. So first video we're going to look at is scouting the right wing substitution side and trying to identify, what is their preference when they come out on the right wing? What do they do well? And then figuring out maybe what they're not as comfortable in. So here, this would be different formations that we've seen from Croatia on the right wing sub side. Sorry. So here they're coming out with a center back specialist and a pivot on the right-handed side. Croatia has one of the best center backs in the world. He's probably got one of the best 8.5 meter shots out there. Coming out here, you see the center back specialist again, one of their preferred formations. Obviously, Lucenborough, one of the best right wings in the world, is another one of their high percentage shots that they will take. Another preference with the center back in the middle. And then using the pivot on 360s. And here we see a different formation. Placing, you can see they're behind here in Denmark, against Denmark. They're down 12-8, and they decided to change their formations. We're probably having a little challenge with their center back specialist, so they moved the center back, or they moved the specialist over to the right wing in order to create some other opportunities. So this would be important to note that this would kind of be their second choice, second preference, if the first one's not working well coming into that game. Either that, or it could be something that they've seen from Denmark, the way they're playing, that they may be able to get a high percentage shot, kind of utilizing something that was happening there in the first half. You hear they're sticking with the right wing specialist on the sideline, and then great breakthrough shots there from the center back, or really the right wing Lustenborough, just creating another closer angle for him to get better shots there. And then you're going to substitute. You're going to look at the next half, which in this game happened to be the left wing substitution side. So we saw on the right wing substitution side, their preference was to come out center back specialist and then adjust if needed to a sideline specialist on the near side or the right wing. And then when we look at the left wing substitution side, you can see that they're coming out with the specialist on the left wing behind the pivots on their near sideline. And we ended up seeing Croatia running this a lot last year, highly successfully, obviously winning world championships in Greece and the gold medal in the World Games in Alabama. This ended up being their preferred offensive attack. You can see why they really get their top shooters get high percentage shots with these formations here. Once again, they're running the sideline specialist on the left. So it's important to scout each team out that you're going to be playing, identify their preferences, identifying how they adjust, how they adapt in case their preferences are not working at that time, and then be ready to counter their counter. Same thing, we looked at our own shooter tendencies, and here you want to look at your competition shooter tendencies. This is a video here for the left wing, Santino in Argentina, a fantastic player, very successful in the Youth Olympics with Argentina. So here you're looking for tendencies. Do they prefer in-flight shots? Do they prefer 360 shots? If they're getting in-flights, are there preferences? Do they like to shoot high near post? Do they when they're shooting 360s, do they release quick? Do they have certain locations that when it comes to that they're going to look for? I think the reality is when you're in a high pressure situation or a high lever situation, the end of the games, most people always kind of fall to their training and follow their preferences. So when the game isn't close or the game is early on, most people can kind of move shots around. But in those last couple of minutes, when the game is tight and the situation and the pressure is the highest, that's when tendencies become the most important. So here we will watch just a simple shooting video for one of the shooters for Argentina. And you want to break these down too. You want to see what percentage shots came out of 360s, what percentage shots came out of in-flights, what formations were they in, what was the situation when they were taking them, and then just break it down. So these are the maps that you're going to create in the off season, just to kind of prepare your goalies. If you're playing this team first, then you can practice for that. You can simulate those shots in practice. And then as the tournament's going along, it's important just to kind of maintain the same scouting and kind of work on identifying tendencies that are more recent. So having that, developing those, looking for tendencies beforehand, and being able to prepare your goalie for those shots for each game I think is vital. It could give you that 1-2 goal advantage that you need, especially in the last 2 minutes of each game or each half. All right, so we've scouted our team. So now we've scouted the other team. So now you want to develop your game plan. Your game plan is going to be different, usually for each team, but usually not too different because you want to maximize what you do well. For us, we like to the game plan. The first thing we always look at is defense. We're a big believer that offense wins games, but defense wins championships. So we usually game plan our defense first. When we're doing our defense, when we're game planning, we take an approach very similar to what we do in American football. I think Bill Belichick is excellent at this with the Patriots. You want to identify, the top 3 things that your opponent does well. And then you want to take their top options away. Like you want them to beat you with their second, third, or fourth best option, right? If you're allowing them to get what they want, and allowing them to take what they're most comfortable with, then usually that doesn't end well for you. So really, that's what you do. Identify the top 3 things and then work on taking each thing away. Defensive game plan. This would be an example. This would be one where you're playing in a formation. So let's say the team A comes out and their preferred formation is using a left wing specialist. Then you identify, this would be similar to like what Croatia has here. Identify what they do well. What are their 3 top offensive options? What are their 3 preferences when they're putting the left wing at specialist? For this team here, the right wing is fantastic, has great spin shots. Probably not as efficient in the lob, but has, one of the best spin shots in the world. Left wing specialist is a high percentage shot. The pivot is excellent at in-flights. So if you know that and those are the 3 preferences, you want to develop your game plan. First thing you want to do is take what they're the best away at. Let's take away that right wing spin shot. And then let's force some of the other shots. The pivot may be great on in-flights, but maybe the 360 is not quite as good. Maybe the center back is the person you're going to kind of shadow or help off a little bit, and make those shots as hard as you can for those players. And then, so once you develop your game plan, get into practice. This is an example of us working on forcing ground passes, forcing 360s, taking lob passes away from the pivot, forcing that pass to the 360, and then coming in with a quality block using 2 hands for that. And then defense is really a lot about understanding your teammate and exactly where they are and working together as a unit to kind of create those shots. The reality is on defense, you're always a man down. You're always 4-3. Most of the time they're going to get a shot. Your job is just to kind of make that the lowest percentage shot, make that the most uncomfortable shot you can. And then eventually the percentages will catch up for you. So same thing here. Here you can see we're working on creating that 360 pass to the pivot, and then being able to drop down and get a quality block and make that shot as hard as you can. This may be one where you do everything right 5 times and you get, 1 stop, but it's that 1 stop that makes a difference there. So here we go. This is USA Croatia in Greece. We had an opportunity to play Croatia twice. I think we learned a lot from them in this Greece game. We have game plans that we make. We have game plans that we develop and you work on in practice. But sometimes when you get in the game, the speed is a little different. The pressure is a little different. And sometimes that game plan doesn't execute or isn't where you're at. So then you learn from that, right? So here we have a team that's playing left wing specialist. They have a fantastic right wing. Their best options are their highest percentage shots are going to be that right wing spin shot, using the left wing specialist shot, and then really maximizing the pivot in flight. So knowing that, how do you execute a game plan? These are the first couple possessions in the game. See here, the game plan. So coming out, you don't always get what you practice, right? So I think this is something that you learn as a coach, and something that you learn as you're developing or preparing the team for the next game or the next practice, for the next major tournament. What did we do to work on our game plan? If you think you have a good game plan and it doesn't work, how can we work on that next time to execute that? So I think you can see here we didn't quite execute our game plan that we wanted. The first 3 shots were the right wing, the second shot was the left wing specialist, and then the third shot was the pivot specialist. And as you can see from the score, the game didn't quite go. This half didn't go the way that we wanted. But luckily, there's 2 halves in beach handball, which makes it great. Starting 0-0, you can sit down and really just kind of work and re-emphasize the need to follow the game plan, trust the game plan. And if the game plan is not working, then we can make adjustments on it at that point, but really just kind of stick with that. So then second chance, second half, here we're going into a right wing substitution side. Remembering that we want to take away the right wing shot, take away the specialist, and force some in pivot, take away the in pivot shot. See, as we started here, we were able to execute the game plan, but still, I think it's important to once again note and to remind your defense that even though you execute the game plan properly, you're not going to get a stop 100% of the time, or you're not going to get a stop even a majority of the time. Beach handball is a sport where you're always at a man disadvantage on defense. It's a matter of understanding that. It's a matter of remaining disciplined, and eventually the numbers and the percentages will catch up to you. So here, once again, you want to take away the top options and then really work on forcing shots that may not be their best, that are still, very high percentage shots and really great shots, but aren't as high percentage. So instead of this being an 80% shot, this is now a 70% shot. And then keeping at it. So you can see that 3 goals were scored, and then on this formation here, and then on this attack here, you're able to execute that game plan, and then with the discipline, you're able to get a turnover or get a stop. This half here, I think we executed the game plan a much better, gave ourselves a little bit better chance to compete, but then probably had a couple breakdowns just at the ends of the half, and as you can see, it was a much closer half. Went down to 1 point into that. But those games are vital as you move forward and prepare for the next game. So that's our defensive game plan. Create a game plan, see what they do well, and then try to take away at least their first and second options, and then trust that the percentages are going to come with you. And then understand that even though you execute the game plan, they're still going to get shots. It's just the nature of the game. So for offense, so know what you do good, know what the other team's weaknesses are, and then find ways to create your preferred shot, find ways to have the highest percentage shot for you against that defense, right? For us in the US, we play teams that, we have a fantastic pivot. We have one of the best pivots in the world. He draws a lot of attention. And having him score is not always, going to be our first option for that, but we want to be able to at least have him involved in impacting the game, using our pivots that way. So even though our pivots may not get shots, we want to use that attention that they draw just to kind of create the best shots for other shooters, and the best angles and highest percentage shots that we can get. So here's an example of an offensive game plan that we ran last summer. We're playing a team that plays a very aggressive defense, which will definitely help out for our pivot. When you're playing a high defense, there's a lot of space underneath, and that can create a lot of attention to the pivot. So our game plan, identify which defenders are playing high, and then we want to position our pivot there to force those defenders to flatten down and create the best angles for our teammates here. And ideally, in this one, we were trying to create shots for our left wing, and create not just shots but high percentage shots with the best angles. So here we are playing in Alabama, we're playing Croatia again, some modified offensive game plans that we had. Placing, looking at the other games, looking how when you're scouting and seeing how they reacted, one of the things that we looked at was seeing how they guarded the pivot with sideline specialist, and then how they guarded the 2-on-1 or the numerical advantage that we would have. So here we're looking at switching our pivot around, playing a left-handed side, creating angles for our left wing, and trying to create the best opportunities we can for them. When you have a pivot and you have an aggressive defense or a high defense, by moving the pivot to the sideline specialist side, the left-handed side, you're creating ideally either a 2-on-1 with the two highest percentage shots in the game with the pivot and the specialist, or you're forcing that center defender to kind of really help out on the pivot, creating that 2-on-1 with the center back and the left wing, and then maximizing that space over there. You can see as the attack happens here. Ooh, I guess we won't be able to pause. Taking advantage, creating angles on that small space, and creating small space to big space, placing the pivot in different locations to flatten the defense. And then here's an example of moving the pivot away from the specialist side to force the defender on that far side to have to play the 2-on-1 with the pivot in the left wing. And this would be us just developing a game plan just to kind of realizing what we do well and trying to maximize that to create shots, for everyone else. In this game, you can see that, we ended up winning this half here with Croatia, going to a shootout where we eventually lost in the shootout. But overall, I think we had a successful second opportunity, taking advantage of what we learned and from the initial tournament in Greece, and then really kind of maximizing and adjusting your game plan as you move forward. So when you're creating an offensive game plan, just remember what you do good and then trying to maximize that to create the highest percentage shots that you can. And then practice. Practice is so important for discipline. Practice is so important to make sure that all your players are on the same page, that everyone understands their role, and then that everyone is just able to execute the game plan for the game day. What we've learned is that coming up to major tournaments is so important to have the whole entire team together. The longer you can get them together, the better. Here in the US, we don't have any, professional players. And so our challenges are a little different that, some of our players have families, they have jobs, that a lot of them support themselves when we travel to tournaments. So we're not able, to take a month off and have everyone kind of practicing together. But we do like to try to have a camp at least like a week or so before the tournament, just to kind of get everyone in there. That's going to be playing together just to make sure that they're practicing together. We're checking out different alignments. We're practicing different formations. We're practicing different people in different positions to see how they react to each other and how having different people in different spots will be best for our game plan. And then I think it's important just to enjoy the journey. Don't worry about the destination, don't worry about the results, but have fun in the process, have fun in the journey of it. Just remember, practice, not all the time is fun, but practice is important. You want to create an environment when you're practicing that's competitive. You want to try to simulate the game as best you can, simulate the pressure of playing against your opponents the best you can. Make practice just a safe space for errors. Make practice a safe space to make mistakes. The more you learn from mistakes, the better off you're going to be in the game. I think, like I said earlier, you learn more from failure than you do from success. but make that environment safe and make people comfortable with failure in practice, so that when you get to the game, they're in a little better position. And like we talked about, people, they fall to their level of training. So make sure that they're training to a high level where the ceiling or the bottom is at a good level for pressure there. And then practice until everyone knows their role. Make sure going into the tournament that everyone's role and understanding of the game plan has already been outlined for you, and then understand how you're going to create and practice different counters for what you expect as well. And then I think finally, here we're having a shootout. I wanted to show a little bit of the shootout, not to neglect the shootout. Practice shootout, practice. Shootouts are just as important as each half, if not more important. Practice goalies coming out, practice goalies coming in. Have the goalies practicing different techniques, forcing the right, forcing the left, forcing to small corners. But go out and practice and learn by doing. Learn by repetition. So create that muscle memory over hours of practice. And practice is really where you develop that database of what works and what doesn't work that you're going to pull from and use in the games. Here you can see we're practicing having the goalie come out, and then different techniques around that, whether it's an early shot, whether that's moves to the left or the right, and just kind of working on that. And then as well, having the goalie work different techniques on what they want to do, how far they want to come, make sure they don't come out too far. How do you put pressure on that passer, put pressure on the person catching to make that as difficult as possible. To build that database, use practice and really just kind of build that database, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Would be my overwhelming theme for practices there. And then when you get in the games are a lot easier than practice. Just have fun. Enjoy the moment, enjoy the work that you guys put in, and enjoy just the time, with your brothers, with your teammates on the court, and celebrate successes with everybody as a group. But just have fun. The game is great. Beach handball is the greatest game in the world. We all have passion for this game, and really just kind of use that, and then work on creating smiles and camaraderie that hopefully will last for a lifetime. So hopefully you were able to pick up one or two things from our lecture today. I believe that is the last slide. So I just wanted to thank you guys for spending time with us today and sharing your time with us. And I'll turn that over to Adrian to see if he had any questions or anything else for us today.
Very interesting. And have some. We'll try not too long because we'll try to be as important in your shooter. You recommend?
Oh, I was having some trouble hearing you there on the question. I don't know if you were able to repeat that or not. I'm assuming we had some great questions. Oh, I think Adrian's rejoining us. I was worried there that was going to be my reception, but that was good. But really, I think the key when you're developing and practicing and preparing, a team for world championships is understand your team, understand what you do best, maximize what you guys do best, and then take advantage of those weaknesses when you see them.
Okay, sorry, Michael, my internet froze a bit, so I'm back. I don't know if you answered the question about
No.
the software. About the software.
No, I missed the question.
Okay, so the question was, you mentioned the importance of analyzing your shooters. What software do you use, or any you would recommend, especially for beach handball?
Yeah, we use XPS. We have an agreement with XPS through USA Team Handball. I like XPS. It's a great program. It allows you to just kind of tag the entire game as you're going and tag each shooter. You can create templates so that you can actually go through a 10-minute half or 20-minute game like really quickly. So probably within 30 minutes, you could have the whole game tagged. And once it's tagged, you can do, really great database searches where you can just say, show me all the shots from number 7, show me all the shots from the left wing, show me all the shots using a right wing substitution side. And then you just collect that, right? So then when you do a database search and you've tagged 10 different games, you can go in and do a search for the last 10 games. So if you have, let's say you're scouting, Croatia, the best team in the world last year, and you have 7 games tagged, you can say, show me, all the shots from the center back for the last 7 games. And I think that helps out tremendously. So we use XPS. I think we're very comfortable with that. It's great for us because all our players have the app and we can share videos with that really quickly as well.
Perfect. What is the best way to build up a good defense, in your opinion, of course?
The best way to build up the defense, I think, is practice. I think you have to be aware of the different formations, and you as a group have to know where you're going to help off of. I mean, the reality is you're always going to be a man down on defense. And in every formation, there's basically a base person that you want to help off of. It may differ depending on, the quality of shooters for each team. But when you're practicing, you have to be able to quickly identify where you want the shot to come from, and then have a system in place where each player can communicate with the person next to them that let's work together to create the shot, coming here from the pivot. So for us, if formations change quickly, we have a way to say, let's force the shot here to the pivot. And then, let's force a 360 or to the pivot instead of like a lob pass. So really working in practice to develop the teamwork, the team camaraderie, the support for each other to work as a unit, just to kind of create the pass that you're looking so that you can make that shot as hard as possible.
Are going to move to the attacking part of the game. The question is, we got is, what offensive formation is the best to win the match when the score is close during the end of the sets?
So if it's like a golden goal and it's a 1 goal to win, I think everyone's so specials at that point, and you just need 1 point. And what's best is what's best for your team, what your team does best, right? So my team, I don't have a lot of players that started in handball. We have a lot of guys that came from volleyball, basketball, other sports. So we don't have the traditional handball background. If you have a lot of handball background, we see in the golden goals that it becomes a very simple overload where you start the ball on the left side and you kind of work it over to the right side because of the numerical advantage to create that shot. For us, that's not always the best option because we haven't really had years of experience in that. Sometimes playing it, keeping it simple and having shorter passes, starting the attack from the pivot, and then creating like a concentration from the defense to create out to the wing sometimes can work. So there's not a one size fit all answer to that. It's whatever I think your team is best at. But most teams in tight situations for golden goal, kind of like to start with overloads, creating to the other side.
How do you organize a training session in attack, in defense? You said that the practice is the most important, and also you encourage the players to make mistakes in practice. not to learn from them and not make them during matches.
Yeah, so we definitely encourage our players in practice to try something they've never practiced before, or never they tried before. If somebody is trying something for the first time in the middle of a game, that usually doesn't turn out well. So we want you, if you have an idea or if you have something that you're working on, you know, practice. You do it in practice, and then if it doesn't work, no one's going to get mad at you, because I think it's something that you've learned, right? And if it doesn't work the first time, but you feel that it's still a very good tool or a good option for you to have, keep practicing it. Keep practicing it until you kind of get that mastery level. So we design our practices for that. We try to create a safe space. You know, we try to keep our practices positive. We try to keep the negativity out. And we really just kind of encourage people to, you know, try something different, try something new, and really just kind of push your own boundaries, push your own limits, and try to make yourself, you know, a better player by trying something that, you know, that you're uncomfortable with. I think people learn more by pushing that boundaries of comfort. You can't always just practice what you're good at, right? You got to sometimes become uncomfortable so that you can expand your game. So that's how we design our practices, basically with a sense and a culture of positivity, without any repercussions, you know, for making mistakes in the practice. But, you know, as we get closer and closer to the tournament, you know, the mistakes aren't quite as tolerated at that point. But as we get there, you know, as we're practicing, feel free to do what you can do to get better.
You started your presentation talking about scouting your team and building your team. A question refers to that. How do you do your team building in a general manner? How do you start building a team?
I think team building starts with day one. I think the first practice is you want to put people in a situation or in an environment where they feel comfortable, you know, with people around them. So usually the first day of practice, you know, we have introductions. You know, you want to have icebreakers, whether it's a small joke, whether it's a humiliating story. You want something where people are vulnerable around other players, and you want to start building that trust. You know, trust is very hard to build, and it's really easy to lose. So you got to create icebreakers. You got to create situations where people can become vulnerable to help build trust. I think affirmations and positivity is huge to kind of help develop teamwork. At the end of each practice, we have everyone kind of go through and, you know, say one thing that the person next to you did, you know, good today, you know, kind of build that confidence up and kind of build that camaraderie between them. A lot of times people will know, but hearing it from somebody that you're playing with or somebody you respect can go, you know, miles. So it starts from day one. It's little moments. It's little moments where somebody, you know, says something, or somebody picks somebody up after they fall down. That starts building that team chemistry. And I think there's a magic formula for it. I think it's just creating time and opportunities and situations where you can build trust between everyone.
There is a myth circulating that practicing in sand is a cause for injury from indoor players who are transitioning to beach handball. Do you believe this myth, or can we debunk it once and for all now?
Well, you know, I in trade, I'm a doctor. I'm a sports medicine trained physician. I haven't looked at any studies on that yet. We haven't had any major injuries. We don't have a lot of guys that play indoor though. So my experience in that may be a little more limited than some of our counterparts in Europe. But just from a basic medical perspective, I would question that. I think that cross training is super important for all athletes. I think injuries happen when you start specializing too much. Sand to me is tremendous. I think you start working out muscles on the court or on the sand that you don't even work on the court, right? So injuries happen when you have deficiencies and weakness. Like sometimes the muscles may be too strong and maybe overmatching or overpowering other muscles and putting too much pressure on the ligaments. So working in the sand, working out in the sand is a great way to kind of create that balance between the muscles. I would be shocked to see that. I think that being able to go out and play in the sand and cross training is super important for injury prevention. So I don't buy into that theory right now, but obviously everything changes, and if there's evidence out there, then I think there could be some good studies for that. But without
I will
having
merge.
seen those studies right now, my instincts would say no.
Okay, good. You are the perfect person to be asked this question with your background. I will now merge two questions into one. So, what is the importance of the player, of the specialist, and what's the best way to enhance the training for the pivot? So we are
Yeah, so
talking about two positions in beach handball.
yeah. The specialist, I think, has different roles depending on where you put them. If you put the specialist on the sideline, really their role is more to create space for the other players so that you can play 3-on-2. The specialist on the sideline will draw a lot of attention from the defense. If they leave the specialist open, then you're going to get a high percentage shot from the specialist on the sideline. When you put a specialist in the middle at center back, they're going to draw a lot more attention from the defense because they're a threat to score from a little further out, right? They can score from 7.5, 8, 9 meters sometimes. So they're going to get a lot of attention that way. The highest percentage shot in handball is that specialist breakthrough in the middle. So if you can get that, definitely take that. But just kind of like on the roll on the sideline, the specialists, their main role is to create space for other players because they're always going to have someone on them. So whether you put the specialist in the middle and you're creating space for some of the wings or the pivot, the main role is not always to score. It's just to make the players around them better and create space. I think what was the next question for the pivot?
What's the best way to train a pivot to enhance his skills?
Practice. I mean, the pivot's job is to understand spacing. The pivot's job is to understand what the defense is doing. The way the pivot reads the defense is almost as important as the specialist. It's right around the same level, right? The pivot has the ability to create, tremendous angles for the wings on the side. So if they can recognize the way the defenses are guarding them and playing them, they can drag players to the middle. They can switch sides to create that. So really, you want to put the pivot in practice in situations where they are actually, trying to read the defense and kind of get a feel for how they're being guarded so that they can kind of position themselves in the right position. And then training the pivot's about scoring, right? I mean, that's the second highest percentage shot after that specialist in the middle. So a lot of lob shots, a lot of in-flights to that pivot in the middle of the court, and practice bearing shots in the corners and the windows around the goalie, and just giving them those opportunities to really do what pivots do and score a lot of goals. So be a threat, draw a lot of attention, work a lot of shots, and then in practice, really have the pivot, aware of what's happening and work on that defensive awareness and how they can position themselves to create shots for other players.
In beach handball, there has to be a winner, right? It's a non-draw game. So how do you manage a loss? This is another question we got for you.
Well, I think in beach handball, everyone's a winner. Just getting out there and enjoying the sun and being able to participate, you're winning. I would say that we've had a lot of experience in losing in some close and some tough games. And it's not always about winning and losing, right? It's about the experience that you're going out and you're spending quality time with, your family, your brothers, and then learning from it. Like, unfortunately, you can learn a lot from failure, and learning from that kind of builds for the next environment. The journey is never over just because you win one tournament. You have the next tournament coming up. Just because you lose one tournament, you have the next tournament coming up. So there's always another tournament. There's always another journey. But really, the game is just a passion, right? It's enjoying the moment, enjoying your time with everybody, learning what worked, what didn't work, and then trying to create the best environment so that in the next tournament you can do better and enjoy that time, so you don't have to keep giving speeches about improvement and enjoying the game itself.
And one last question, Michael, for you. Do you have any tips for training young players, the youth and the junior groups, the junior teams?
Yeah, depending on the age, I would say if you're starting really young, the most important thing I think for offense on beach handball is understanding spacing. And so really kind of training that spacing, starting 2-on-1 and then kind of working from there. Usually when we do with younger kids, we don't even implement 360s or so. It's just understanding who's open, understanding what the space is, and then start in small groups, start the attack 2 versus 1 as you see mastery in that, then you go 2 versus 3, 3 versus 2, and then as you get to the 3-2, then you get into the 4-3. And then as soon as you can learn that and you can have the fundamentals of spacing, then you can kind of start implementing the 360s and the in-flights at that point. And I'm sure there's a lot of great videos on teaching just the fundamentals and the approaches to the 360s and working on the in-flights. But I think really you have to start out at the very beginning with fundamentals, and that's understanding spacing and how to work in a numerical advantage, both offensively and defensively.
Once again, thank you very much, Michael, for this presentation and for your clear and concise answers. It's been an excellent webinar. This is the end of it. However, once again, thank you, Michael, and we'll see each other with another lecture and another webinar tomorrow at 14 CST. Thank you very much. Have a very nice day.
Thank you, guys.